In our society, cults tend to aggregate susceptible simpletons, and joining one is so easy because people such as that want to belong, and the cult welcomes them with open arms. However, leaving one can be quite the traumatic experience because it involves pulling out the big chainsaw and lopping off what you had previously considered to be a core part of your own identity. So obviously, the best anti-cult countermeasure is just don't join in the first place. And this is really something to consider seriously, I think, if you are presently lying awake in bed, making little teepee in the sheets, dreaming of the amazing outback adventures you are going to have when you finally buy that brand new Ineos Grenadier. This video arises as a consequence of several of you sending me recently a link to a YouTube video which is called "A Blown Ineos Grenadier Engine in the Outback, the Full Story, What to Expect." And this video is on Canny Outdoors, is the name of the YouTube channel, which is owned by a dude named John Canny, who is a member of the Ineos 4x4 Club of Queensland. So it's a sort of a sub-branch of the cult of the Ineos Grenadier, if you like. And it's only a metaphor, and it's just a joke. So get back in your box if you're a fanboy, all right? And it concerns a dude named Arthur, who is a mate of John's, apparently, and he's also a member of the club and a member of the cult, and the victim, importantly enough. And the thing that guts me about this story is that the Ineos Grenadier could be so good, it could be fantastic off-road, it could be just the double Ds, right? But if the corporate culture supporting it is third rate, then it's really not a contender for outback travel, is it? I mean, that's pretty clear. And based on what I know, and obviously I'm only getting part of the story here, but the thing that is letting the Ineos Grenadier down, specifically in this case, and the risk that you would run if you actually buy one, is that the corporate culture does not measure up in terms of its ability or willingness to support you when the chips go down in the worst possible way in a place where allegedly this vehicle should be so comfortable. This report is sponsored by NordVPN. Get a mega discount plus 4 extra months for free right now with my exclusive deal. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Online security threats are everywhere, but you don't have to be the next victim. That's where NordVPN comes in, locking everything down securely in the background. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Every 2-year plan receives that huge discount plus 4 extra months of Nord for free. nordvpn.com/AEJC. Using NordVPN is easy. Just subscribe, download the app and connect. One click later, your IP address is shielded and your traffic is encrypted across as many as 6 of your devices. Nord is the fastest VPN on the planet. It costs only about as much as a single cup of coffee every month to keep your data, your identity, and your devices secure. Masking your location means you'll be able to access content and resources that might be blocked where you live. Plus, you can continue to watch your favourite content when you travel. Boost your online security at nordvpn.com/AEJC. Get that mega discount and enjoy those 4 extra months for free. It's all totally risk-free with Nord's rock-solid 30-day money-back guarantee. It's easy to stay safe online. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Future me here with an important and hopefully relevant update on this story. In breaking news, in the 48 hours between sitting down on my ass and recording the body of this report and pushing it live in a few hours' time in the future, the video that orbits my report on John Canny's YouTube channel, Canny Outdoors, concerning the failure and the performance of Ineos has just been removed. When I attempt to invoke the video on Mr. Canny's channel, YouTube.com just tells me that the video has been removed by the user, meaning presumably by Mr. Canny or someone operating on Mr. Canny's behalf, as opposed to some kind of systematic takedown, which would be more typical of something YouTube would do for a policy violation, for example. So, speculating, and it is just speculation, this has to do with some interaction between one of the key parties to the whole report on the balance of probability. So it could be as a consequence of a communication between Ineos and Mr. Canny. They might be a little bit cranky about how the story reflects on them, and I wouldn't blame them if they were cranky. However, I'd suggest that that's not a reason to take down a video in general, because we don't have laws about taking content that makes people cranky down, because if we did, every journalist on earth would be out of a job. The best stories always make someone cranky, in my experience anyway. So probably that could be a factor. It could be some communication between the club, the Ineos 4x4 Club of Queensland, and Mr. Canny, because he is a member as well as a reporter on this incident. There could be a conflict there. Who would know? It could also have to do with the victim, Arthur, and Mr. Canny. They seem to be mates, but Arthur might not be that happy with how he looked in the video or how it reflected upon him or something of that nature. He might just not like the video. It might be a little bit too personal or close to the bone for him, and he did seem to be under a fair bit of stress anyway. I do hope he found it cathartic as opposed to stressful. I think it was quite brave and also valuable to sit down and do that, irrespective of the stress that it must have caused him, because of the value that doing such a brave action could be to somebody in the position of making a decision on a Grenadier themselves, because it's a lot of money and the consequences matter, basically. So as a personal message from me to Arthur, I'd say 2 thumbs up, dude. That was hard for you to do. I know how confronting it is to be on camera in front of thousands of people live or via YouTube, whatever. It is very stressful, and doing it has value. And I've always found that doing it has to be, it's not pleasant to do it, but the value of what you do is what matters. So I give you, if I had more thumbs, they'd all be up, dude, but I only have 2 to give. If I had 10, you would have 10 thumbs up. Thank you for doing that video with Mr. Canny, albeit briefly. Now, I've decided to continue with this report because of the public interest. I know the videos come down and it's impossible for you to check. You'll just have to take my word for it. I've taken screenshots of the comments, which are a bit of a bloodbath for Ineos, frankly, and the description. If you want to verify some of the facts, such as the oil slick and the commentary in the moment surrounding the failure of Arthur's Grenadier on the track out of Chile Beach, I will put links to some videos on Mr. Canny's channel that detail their trip. And there's plenty of evidence like that still in those videos live as I record this video.
Lead car has suddenly lost oil. You can see on the road here. So we're just trying to determine what's going on, but this is not good news.
So I hope that explains the apparent disconnect that's coming up between me referring endlessly to this video, which for all intents and purposes no longer exists on the YouTube platform, but I think it's too valuable to a prospective buyer of a Grenadier to just bin at this point, because if you've got 120 grand or whatever it is burning a hole in your pocket and you've got a fantasy about how this is going to be, I'd suggest that there could be a huge disconnect between the fantasy of Grenadier ownership and the reality if something goes wrong. It could be like, I don't know, marrying a supermodel. Could be great for a few weeks and then, they do tend to be shallow and vain, don't they? And there might not be a whole bunch of support on offer when the going gets tough. At least that's how it seems to me. Now, back to me in the past. The short version of this story is that Arthur's Ineos Grenadier takes the world's biggest dump in its DAX in the worst possible, or one of the worst possible outback locations. We're talking 6 hours north of Coen on the coast, the east coast of the Cape York Peninsula, which is just like Coen is in the middle of nowhere. So we're 6 hours away from that on the wrong side when it comes to providing effective support and repairing a vehicle. It's had a catastrophic engine failure, that's pretty clear, because it leaves a dirty big oil slick on the track, and that's not all that hard to diagnose, therefore, is it? You don't have to get out your scan tool for problems of this nature, but it is a serious problem. So 10 of these vehicles, all cult members, presumably, from the same sub-branch of the cult, the Ineos 4x4 Club of Queensland, and I'm going to keep referring to my notes if you don't mind. They set off on this pilgrimage to off-road Mecca, which would be the tip of Cape York, and they get there, and I guess when they were there it was all quite euphoric, and they stroked each other's beards and had several, fermented beverages and did whatever else, looked at the stars and refrained from getting eaten by crocodiles or stung by boxed jellyfish or, beaten to death by cassowaries, etc., stepping on any stonefish. We could be here all day. Like, you could be at the Hyatt, dude. Come on. They have hotties in bikinis at the pool. Free ones. So the Ineos Grenadier runs a 3-litre BMW 6-cylinder engine, and I'm presuming that most of the ones that did this trip are the diesel, okay? So, and they've tuned it or done something to it in a minor way to make it more appropriate for the Grenadier. And throughout this story, I need to emphasise that I'm only basing what I say on the bits of the story that are reiterated by John and Arthur, both from the cult, on camera. I'm not really in a position to talk to Ineos. I don't have any contacts at Ineos, but I would say that John and Arthur both seem like particularly conservative, credible, honest chaps. You wouldn't have a problem saying, hey, dude, just mind the shop. I've got to go out for a couple of hours. They're those kinds of Aussies, right? So I don't think they're beating this up, and I don't think they're bullshitting in any intentional way. I don't think they've got that level of Machiavellian guile in them. I think they're reiterating what they see, at least, as an honest and forthright version of events based on what happened and what happened subsequently for August, September, October, November, the 4 intervening months, and still waiting for a fix. Okay, so there is that. So according to them, based on what they say in their video, Ineos has thrown Arthur properly under the bus, and it's like getting thrown under the bus and run over, and then they ran in and grabbed him and pulled him back to the curb so they could throw him under the next bus several times. Although typical of cult members, it's almost like that Stockholm syndrome. They even go, right at the end of this story, they even both agree that Ineos has done the right thing, mate, kind of thing. I'm just not getting it. I'm not getting that at all. So anyway, I don't think Ineos are like, what would you say? I don't think they're properly evil motherfuckers. I don't think it works that way. I don't think anyone in the car industry is that way. Like, they're not boiling babies in oil recreationally 9 to 5 or something. It's not what they are. They're probably not taking any perverted sadistic pleasure in Arthur's predicament. And I get the sincere feeling that Arthur is at the limit of what he can take. The poor bastard. I mean, he has been through the ringer. And obviously, you buy a vehicle like that, it's really closely linked to your identity, and you want to take it to Cape York, and then you want to come back and you want to go, yeah, it was great. It was great, dude. And he had the exact opposite experience, which I'm going to detail for you, based on John and Arthur's side of the story. Actually, John does most of the talking, because I did think that Arthur was just one of those largely non-verbal guys, but right at the end of the video, dude, he breaks down in tears. It's like he can't cope with telling the story, and I have nothing but sympathy for him. And I also think that this is the opposite of the way you should feel if you spend whatever it is for your particular Grenadier, 120, 140 grand or something, and you go on a big adventure. It shouldn't reduce you to the point where you can't cope. It really shouldn't. And the thing that's doing this, seemingly, is the corporate culture at play, not so much the problem with the vehicle. We'll get to that. So I think their attitude is more like, I don't know if you've ever read it. It's pretty interesting. It's like an essay by Hannah Arendt. This is way back in 1961. It was a report in the New Yorker. It's quite famous. It's called A Report on the Banality of Evil, and it dealt with the Nazis. A particular Nazi whose job was the logistics of getting people into the concentration camps, right? Like grim stuff. And the thing that the report notes is that he's just so mundane. He wasn't an evil motherfucker at all. He was just a seemingly normal, boring chap who had a job to do, kind of thing. I think the culture at Ineos is just that of the, if they were a person, you'd probably call them a clueless, expedient cockhead who just doesn't have any empathy for the plight of the individual, right? It doesn't seem like Darth Vader and the Emperor conspiring against the Jedis or something. It's not that, on the balance of probability anyway. So Arthur looks at this point like he's got borderline PTSD, which is pretty serious stuff, right? And I know I try to be a bit jovial and see the lighter side of everything, but it's hard to joke about that, you know? This is a $65,000 repair too. Just say that to yourself quietly. $65,000. And basically Ineos has said, nah, that's not on us. That's environmental, whatever the fuck that means. We'll get to that as well. But their response to his warranty claim is, nah, the environment did that to your car, not us. It's not a manufacturing defect, so kind of thing. And that sucks. That's not the end of it. It's probably labour to fit it. And he's got to pay for 2,600 kilometres of towing because they're not picking up the tab for that with their roadside assistance, you know. So this is quite an expensive repair. Thankfully, though, Arthur's insurer has decided to come to the party late in play, just recently. The insurers sort of said, yeah, okay, we'll look after that. You know, but that shouldn't happen either, and we'll get to that as well. One of the things I find amazing, right, with this whole story is that the vehicle gets picked up. It gets collected by Allianz Roadside Assistance because although Ineos will say, oh, yes, we do roadside assistance, like every other car maker in remote areas, they just slut it out to Allianz, right? So the bottom line there is you're at Cohen. You're 6 hours north of Cohen, just off Chile Beach, and you've got to get back to civilization where the vehicle can be assessed and repaired. It's like 6 hours back to Cohen, and then you can go to Cooktown or Weipa. They went to Cooktown. They couldn't diagnose it there. So ultimately it's got to go back to Brisbane. That's 2,600 kilometres on a flatbed truck. And the logistics of doing it, there's no flatbed just waiting. You've got to get it from civilization, the truck, take it to the vehicle that needs to be rescued, and then bring it back. So 5,200 kilometre round trip, which is further than Sydney to frickin' Perth. So there's that. Have a guess what the status of replacement engines is if you're an Ineos owner, because according to John and Arthur, there is one replacement engine in stock, if that's the word, and it's in the world, one in the world, and it's in fucking Belgium, okay? So once they decide to bring the engine here, they tell him it's going to be 9 to 12 more weeks. He's already waited 4 months, right? 9 to 12 more weeks by sea freight. They're going to put it on a boat, the bastards. Late in play, they decided to air freight it, okay? And this is what John and Arthur, at the conclusion of that YouTube video, which I will link to in the description, you should watch it. That's what they describe as Ineos doing the right thing, mate, right? Like, you've got to be kidding. So, according to Ineos, that's the state of play. Like, they're not going to cover you if the environment breaks your vehicle, despite making all these grandiose claims about the vehicle's capability and ruggedness and durability and fit for purpose and all of that bullshit, right? If you take your Ineos to that environment and it breaks, Ineos is going to say, that's on the environment, pick up the tab yourself. I hope you can work it out with your insurer. Now, apart from all that, owning one's a great idea, dude. Like, honestly, when it comes to cults, I'd rather be a flat earther or a moon landing denier because it's cheaper and it's easier to prosecute the arguments for, isn't it? You can say, well, just go to the beach and look out at the horizon. You could see the edge from there, you know. And apropos of the moon landing, how did we ever get through the Van Allen radiation belts anyway? But anyone could see that kind of thing. It's harder to repudiate that for the dumb, isn't it? So here's the thing, okay? This environmental claim is kind of important because it's also seemingly a state secret, right? Because they recover the vehicle finally, and this takes quite some time because you're in a remote location, right? The trip tilts and all of a sudden things aren't working out, and it takes forever to get the vehicle back to Brisbane via Cohen and Cooktown, which is a bit convoluted, but here we are, okay? Ineos will not tell Arthur what the problem is, like specifically, according to Arthur and John, this is, specifically what went wrong with the engine and what caused it, okay? They just, this nebulous claim about it being environmental and therefore not a warranty issue. So why are they... There's a consumer law requirement to support the vehicle with spare parts for a reasonable period of time. And I don't know how supporting a vehicle with spare parts, how you can claim that you're doing that and complying with the law and you've only got one engine in the world to deal with a failure and it's in Belgium and it's going to take 9 to 12 weeks to get here because your default position is we'll just put it on a slow boat. You've got to be kidding. Let's talk about the state secret of what the problem is, right? Because the logic in car companies just does my head in. It's environmental and therefore not our problem. So Arthur is in this position. He's had the car insured by Budget Direct. And then after the failure, but before being told by Ineos to take it up with his insurer, Budget Direct writes to Arthur and they say, we're no longer going to insure Ineos Grenadiers. So when your policy lapses, you'll have to go with a different insurer kind of thing. And I'd suggest that there's only a small number of reasons why an insurer would decline to insure a particular vehicle. And they all boil down to because it's a shitbox that's costing us money and interfering with the bottom line, and to charge you a reasonable amount to insure that car, we'd look like dicks. That's what it is, okay? So the policy lapses. Arthur gets alternative cover. But then Ineos throws him under the bus with this environmental bullshit, and Arthur has to take it up with Budget Direct, and they finally agree to do it. But then they're not going to tell Arthur what the problem is, according to John and Arthur, because now the deal is between Arthur's insurer and Ineos, and like this failure is treated as if it's some state secret. Consumer law says that goods and services have to be reasonably durable. There's an acceptable quality consumer guarantee, which is a piece of legislation that says products and services need to be, among other things, reasonably durable, which means to meet the durability expectations of a reasonable consumer. So the way this trip to Cape York worked, 10 Ineos Grenadiers went to Cape York and 10 came back. And when there was a left turn to go to Chile Beach, because of frickin' course, most of them are towing caravans, aren't they? Most of them with their porter slums just decided not to do this somewhat more difficult trail over to Chile Beach and just head south. And 4 of them, including John and Arthur, decided to deviate east and go to the beach and then come back. And 3 of those Ineos Grenadiers did that trip successfully in the same environment without taking a giant steaming dump in their DAX. So I'd love to know which bit of the environment was particularly over the top for Arthur's vehicle, because they all seem like such conservative cult members. They didn't go out there like an episode of 4-Wheel Drive 24/7 or something, just breaking a few axles and then parking upside down in the Pacific Ocean for a couple of days just for adventure. it seems like the opposite of that to me, like the conservative exact opposite of that. There's no particular incident that caused this failure, according to John and Arthur. It wasn't like, yeah, I really shouldn't have hit that rock at 120 kind of thing. Nothing like that. They all did the same driving, and one of them crapped the bed and the other three were fine. So I'd love Ineos to submit that vehicle for independent assessment and publish the frickin' results. That'd be really interesting. I think we'd all find that somewhat fascinating. And they're hiding behind this take it up with your insurer. So I went out and asked my lawyer whether or not a $140,000 4x4 was covered by Australian consumer law, and in particular the guarantee of acceptable quality. And when I say my lawyer, I mean ChatGPT. Like, do I look like I'm made of lawyers kind of thing? Anyway, ChatGPT diligently took 59 seconds or something to do the research and tell me that I asked it, if I buy a motor vehicle for 140 grand in Queensland, am I covered by Australian consumer law if it fails to meet the guarantee of acceptable quality? And then 59 seconds later, the AI said to me, in most cases, yes, a $140,000 vehicle purchased in Queensland can still be covered by the Australian consumer law, consumer guarantees, including acceptable quality. And the why of this is, quote, under ACL, you're a consumer not only when goods cost less than or equal to $100,000, but also when the goods are of a kind ordinarily acquired for personal, domestic, household use. No price cap on that, right? And also there's a specific limb for a vehicle/trailer acquired principally to transport goods on public roads. And this is all sourced directly back to the ACCC's website. So I think we're on pretty firm ground here. ChatGPT then goes on and says, so for a typical passenger vehicle, an SUV, sedan or a four-wheel drive, even at 140 grand, it's generally still the kind of product commonly bought for personal use, so the consumer guarantees apply. And that comment is also sourced directly back to the ACCC's website. So once again, I don't think we're driving along Chili Beach on that one. A couple of big caveats, not if it's a private sale and if it's a business use kind of thing, which means that even if you otherwise qualify, guarantees won't apply if it's bought for resupply or for use/transformation in production manufacturing or to repair or treat other goods. That's also according to the ACCC. But I can't see how that's the case with Arthur's Ineos, frankly. So covered, dude, covered. If the guarantee of acceptable quality is breached, according to my lawyer, acceptable quality includes being safe, durable, free from defects, etc. The price paid is one factor in judging what's reasonable. For a vehicle's remedies depend on whether it's a major or minor failure. Major can allow rejection or refund or replacement. Minors typically repair first kind of deal. So this is a vehicle that is designed specifically for this kind of work. They threw this kind of work at it, and I see no evidence that they drove irresponsibly. In fact, in part of John and Arthur's video, they cut away to some quite rocky, rock-hopping type driving that they did, and they were doing that super conservatively. There was a spotter pointing, a little bit left, a little bit right, slow down kind of thing.
Well,
there's no evidence that they were doing anything to these vehicles, at least that I've seen, that the vehicle is not designed to do. And yet it still went in Dak Dumpy, and Arthur got thrown under the bus because the environment did it. It's not the vehicle. Get fucked. This is the difference between warranty and consumer law, right? Warranty can be used to limit your entitlements, right? They can limit warranty if they want to manufacturing defects only, but consumer law can't be limited in this way. The vehicle has to be reasonably durable, which means it has to meet the durability expectations of a reasonable consumer in the context of what that product is designed to do. So that the what it's designed to do is kind of important, I'd suggest. So here's what Ineos says about what it's designed to do, okay? off-road capability, built for more, but not Chili Beach, apparently 25% of the time, at least. Proper 4x4 capability. This is all a quote from their bullshit website. It's what the Grenadier exists for, and obviously no actual English speaker was consulted, because the next sentence is, and explains our approach to building it. Best-in-class engine, ladder frame, chassis, permanent four-wheel drive, 3 locking differentials, solid beam axles. We've learned from the best of the past, meaning we didn't innovate. Partnered with the suppliers that got the brief and created an ultimate 4x4 design for the 21st century. Durable, except at Chili Beach 25% of the time. Capable, reliable, except at Chili Beach 25% of the time. And built to go the distance, albeit if 2,600 kilometres of the distance is on the back of a fucking flatbed that they're not prepared to pay for. A 4x4 no one's buying anymore. And I hope no one buys the freaking thing after this. Like, come on. It's got dumb idea written all over it if that's the level of support, really. That's our blueprint for the Grenadier. A seriously capable off-road vehicle engineered to fill the gap. The gap in the back of a flatbed. We'll fill that. And you can take it 2,600 kilometres and then under the bus. Dude. Choose between 2 award-winning straight sixes, 3-litre BMW engines, proven powertrains, enhanced for the Grenadier to deliver peak torque at low revs and sustain it through the range, but not at Chili Beach 25% of the time. So you can maintain momentum and grip without stressing the engine. Nothing about keeping the oil inside it, though. Ensuring full control when tackling tricky terrain. The refined and powerful turbo petrol produces whatever, and the twin turbo makes even more torque for even more pulling power. If you think that buying that shitbox is a good idea, given the level of support that appears to be on offer here, you're living on a different planet than me. And to me, this is compounded by those dicks not even considering that the Ineos 4x4 Club of Queensland are out there actively representing the brand, doing some kind of ambassadorial job for fucking free. And you take one of their members and you physically pretend, seemingly, that consumer law doesn't exist and that he'll just have to take it up with his insurer, who's chosen no longer to insure that vehicle for obvious commercial reasons. And the final thing I'd leave you with is, if you think, oh, well, that's okay because Arthur finally got out of this, he's been reduced to tears at least once in the video, and they cut it a few times by the look of things in edit, and I think it was because he's probably a bit upset for part of that as well. So that's not fun, right? So that's the emotional cost of this kind of cockheadery, I'd suggest. There's that. But even if you take that to one side and you say, yeah, well, ultimately the insurer looked after it, thanks a lot, Budget Direct, and thanks a lot, Budget Direct. You seemingly decided that it was covered by the policy, and even though that policy had lapsed, you went back in time and decided it pertained then, and then you looked after him. So full points to you, Budget Direct, for quote-unquote doing the right thing there and not adding to Arthur's stress. But I'd suggest to you more broadly now, if you think that's a good result, next time you get an insurance policy, just have a look at it. And if you wonder why insurance is so fucking expensive right now, this would be one of those reasons, because Ineos is happy. They're getting paid for the engine, right? They're getting paid to fit it. They're getting paid for their towing and whatever else. So all good from their point of view. All good, I guess, financially from Arthur's point of view, because we wouldn't want to add a $100,000 repair bill to the stress the poor bastard's already been on for the last 4.5 months or something. But why should you and I, who are paying our insurance premiums routinely every year for our houses and our cars and our caravans, whatever, why should we be effectively subsidising organisations like Ineos, who appear just to want some other entity to pay for what seems to me to be emphatically their problem.